But all right, Fab, Vodcast, episode 20. Not going to look it up. We're right.
It's definitely right. And if it isn't,
it's going to be episode 20 anyways.
Yep. We'll change the previous episode or the future episode.
Yeah, depending on what it is. Yeah, if we're actually supposed to be on 19 and we said 20, then the next episode will be the prequel episode.
Exactly.
We'll release 19.
It's going to be weird when we make references to videos that haven't happened yet.
Yeah. But what we will be doing this week, because Dynasty spoilers aren't out yet, we're going to talk about some other decks. We looked at just some random,
some randos.
People made decks online. Now we're going to look at Red Zone Rogue's decks, because he's a pretty well-known content creator.
Yes, a well-known rando.
And he makes decks on Channel Fireball and places like that. So... He's been doing it for a while, and I have used one of his decks before. There's another deck I was looking into using at one point, which actually I don't think he has that listed here. So maybe we'll see if it's on the other site, but we're using a new site to look at him because it's easier to search. I have his Prism deck too, but I have not actually played it.
Right.
Whereas this first deck we're starting with, I have played with slight changes.
I do remember this deck.
Yeah. Viewers may also be familiar with this deck, but we're just going to look at his decks because he is a pretty good deck builder. So he definitely does some things differently from what I would say we typically do in our decks. So it'll be fun to look at it, I think.
Yes.
What does view as list do?
Look at it. That's the word we're using.
Oh, that's neat too. We can do that. Yeah, so we're going to look at it, see what we like about it, see what we don't like about it. Right off the bat, there are some problems with this list. I was originally going to mention this in the video we put out, and then the first game we played with this deck did not go well, largely due to user error, more so than the deck's fault.
Was that the non-record, or
we recorded
deleted?
Both, but I never uploaded that one because the game was 10 minutes.
Yes.
And I made some huge crippling mistakes that accelerated the time of that game. And unfortunately, that was the game in which I talked about my changes to the deck at the beginning. And I forgot to put that at the beginning of the next one.
Okay, are you sure it was not... me being really good at the game?
Well, I mean, you did play well. I definitely made some colossal mistakes.
We'll never know because that game went to the ether.
I mean, I still have it. It's in the archives with
the archives of shame.
With the 6 rare card Viscerai versus Chain game that is also in that void.
Was that another one where I won?
No. I think that went very poorly for you, if I recall.
I think
that's when we learned that Go Big Viscerai was actually a really good deck. I think
either that or my deck was just.
I think your deck was not as good as Chain is now with Seeds of Agony back.
Yes. Okay, that was pre-seeds. Okay.
Yeah, but that was you were doing
was post-seeds, pre-seeds.
Yes,
if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it was post-ban but pre-enabled again,
Yep.
And then it was using rares for Howl from Beyond. And then for Viscerai, that was the first time I played him with Shrill of the Skull Horn and cards like that, where I was doing 20 damage a turn.
Yeah.
and not only was it that deck that we have videos of me playing and a deck guide that I made for it, it was that deck plus Mauvrion Skies.
Right.
It was just purely better version of that deck.
I think that was also back when I was running my deck as an aggro deck, even though it was built as a mid-range deck.
I think you did play fairly aggro that game. But yes, those are the 2 games that have never made it alive because of issues. But yes, basically, the core crux of this deck, as showcased in the last game we played, is the Moonwish Sunkiss combo, which, for those unfamiliar with it, Sunkiss gains you health, and if you've played a card named Moonwish in the same turn, it draws a card and gains Go Again. So it's essentially a 0-cost action card that can have Go Again. The problem with this combo, and why it's largely, at least among us, considered to be one of the worst combos in the game, is that the card you have to play first is called Moonwish, which is 2 cost, 5 power, or you could put a card from your hand on top of your deck rather than pay its cost, which I usually hate those effects in general. And then if it hits, you search your deck for a card named Sunkiss, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So it tutors out the other part of the combo you need. Mm-hmm. Problem is it doesn't have Go Again.
Yep.
So in order to do the Sunkiss, you have to find a way to give this Go Again. In theory, Kano is the only hero that makes this work.
Really?
And specifically because how the combo works here is that whole you may put a card on from your hand on top of your deck rather than pay its cost. Very important in this deck because Kano can play cards off the top of his deck that are non-attack action cards. So you get a copy of Sunkiss in your hand and Moonwish, and then you play Moonwish for free by putting Sunkiss on top of your deck. Then you activate Kano, play the Sunkiss. Sunkiss gains Go Again. You played it as an instant, so you gain an action point back.
Okay.
Which means you still have an action point after Moonwish resolves. And technically speaking, in that order, you have already played Moonwish by the time you play the Sunkiss, so you also draw a card. And then, if it hits, you tutor out another Sunkiss, and you can gain even more health and draw another card and still have an action point. So, Kano's the only one that makes this work because of that weird interaction. Is it good? Well, you can watch the video we put up of Kasai versus Moonwish Kano and tell me what you think.
Could you do it with the lead the charge?
You certainly could do normal things where you just like lead the charge, Moonwish, and then you tutor out Sunkiss and keep the chain going. So there are other options too. This deck does not do that.
It does have
well.
Lead the charge.
It does have 2. It just doesn't have a ton of ways to do that.
Right.
It's basically just lead the charge, and I think that is probably it, if I recall correctly. I don't think there's anything else here. There's plenty of ways to give non-attack action cards Go Again, but that doesn't really help for this combo.
Maybe some other heroes could do it with equipment?
You could definitely build around it a little bit better and have like equipment or more lead the charge is if you really just wanted to do like Moonwish attack and fetch out Sunkiss. I don't think it's particularly great there. I think Kano actually makes it kind of good because he needs the life gain a little bit, and the drawing cards is very helpful for him.
So we could pitch it as it's more organic.
Yes. Yeah, I think it fits Kano better where you'd have to really, really build around it for other things. And while this deck is built around the combo, it really just uses 4 copies of Moonwish, 4 copies of Sunkiss. You're only really dedicating 8 cards to the combo. Mm-hmm. It has this lead the charge, but lead the charge is actually really good in Kano decks for other reasons. So that's not the only thing that you'll be using lead the charge for, because you can always lead the charge and Voltic Bolt, for example, and then do a bunch of arcane damage. That's the basic idea with this deck, is that he wanted to be Battle Mage Kano. So you have 10 attacks, which is a high number for Kano, but you're not going to usually just knock the top of your deck and flip cards off this Kano, whereas you would with other Kanos, per se. And you still will do it sometimes, it's just there's a lot of bricks, because Scar for Scar, Moonwish, Rifting. Which Rifting is probably something you just play in most Kano decks anyways. But it's a little hard to talk about this deck, because I have seen this deck a lot. I've played this deck, you've seen it in play, so we already are familiar with this deck. Whereas the other decks will be like first experiences a lot more for us to talk about. But what I do want to talk about, because there are two glaring problems with this deck, I would say, with the way he built it. One of which is very surprising, because it is just strictly wrong. Like, this isn't even there is no subjective aspect to this. Like, he just dropped the ball a little bit with the deck build, but easy enough to mistake. And that's Null Rune Robe. There is a Null Rune Robe in this deck. Now, he built this deck before the new one came out. There is a new Wizard chess piece which you can just crack to give yourself 1 resource, and has Arcane Barrier 1. That's probably the best thing you can use, because it's an instant speed give you 1 resource, which is just great. And obviously it's just better than Null Rune Robe, because it has everything Null Rune Robe has and more. But even when he built this list, there was the Wizard Robe. So, Robe of Rapture is not great. It really is not. because this is an action and it doesn't have go again, so it takes up all of your action points for the turn to activate Robe of Rapture, but it gives you 3 resources. And it also has Arcane Barrier 1.
So it's essentially...
Yeah, it's just Null Rune Robe plus.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Null Rune Robe should never have been in this deck. That's the one just strict mistake. The other thing is subjective, which I talked about in length at the start of the video that doesn't exist, sadly.
Yeah.
He is running Cracker Jacks. I really, really wanted this to work because I have a cold foil Cracker Jacks. I've joked many times about how I want an excuse to use it, but there's never a good deck for Cracker Jacks. So it's probably one of our most hated cards in a way.
I love to hate.
Yeah.
Love to hate.
Yeah, love to hate. True. The reason he's running Cracker Jacks is that it is the only glove that you can use that will work on every single attack in this deck. It's the only one, which makes you think that it's good. Because you can use it on Moonwish and Rifting, both of which cost 2, and you can use it on Scar for a Scar, which costs 0. Now there's a problem here. You have 10 attacks, 8 of them are 2 cost or higher, so if you do Goliath Gauntlet, which gives you +2 rather than +1, it will still work on 8 of your 10 attacks. Already kind of good numbers there to have double the damage increase for only losing 2 attacks.
Scar for Scar.
The bigger problem here, and we're going to look at the red one for this because it's particularly relevant with the red card, is that Moonwish and Rifting both have on-hit effects where you want them to hit so you can either play your next non-attack action card as an instant or so you can tutor out your Sunkiss to keep the combo going.
Right.
Both of these also have 5 power, which means if you Cracker Jacks them, they go to 6, a very blockable number. If you Goliath Gauntlet them, they go to 7, a much harder to block number.
6 is 2 cards.
Yeah,
7
is 3 usually, or a bunch of equipment and some cards. So I think you're trolling to do Cracker Jacks over Goliath Gauntlets because all it lets you do is give +1 to Scar for Scar, which has no on-hit effect.
Yeah.
The only thing Scar for Scar cares about is what your health total is when you play it. So you really don't benefit from boosting its damage.
Yeah, I mean, it's only a 1 boost to a 4 attack.
Yep,
So
it's
brings
just
it up
a
to a
tiny
5,
bit of extra damage. And then let's see, Rifting. Oh man, can you not actually see like all the way to the bottom of the card on this? I see a problem with FaBrary. So it's just going to be -2 this, so 3.
Yeah.
So obviously the +2 power is not as relevant for Moonwish. I mean, like the one, or for the blue versions, like the one Cracker Jacks effectively does the same thing, but I think you'd rather go for the extra damage that gives you the boost. And again, like Cracker Jacks is enough for the blue attacks to get over the like easy to block with a single card thing, but Goliath Gauntlet still does the same thing for the blue one as well.
Right.
So just in general, I think Goliath Gauntlets is the right pick here. I think it's substantially the right pick. And then Robe of Rapture, or Spell Mage, or whatever it is. I don't remember the name of it anymore. Wizard, Common, Equipment, Search. Spellfire Cloak.
Yes,
I would probably do Spellfire Cloak just because every wizard can play on the opponent's turn. So being able to gain, even though you can only do it on your opponent's turn, you're still going to get some use out of it probably. And it happens at instant speed, so it doesn't cost you an action.
Right.
So Spellfire Cloak is probably the best chess piece to use. But you're really kind of just splitting hairs at that point because most times you're going to bring in Robe of Rapture or Spellfire Cloak is you're playing against another wizard or a heavy arcane damage thing. And so you're just like, okay, well, I don't need this deep blue. I'll do that. And then otherwise the rest of the equipment's totally fine. All makes sense. Talishar is really fun. I find it funny that he has Aether Conduit listed here first because in his deck guide of the video, he really has Talishar as the main weapon.
Okay.
And Aether Conduit is there essentially for trolling your local group, in which like he talks about the hypothetical that they realize you play Battle Mage Cano a lot, and so they start bringing in typical block stuff to deal with your Battle Mage aspect, and then you switch to Aether Conduit and just arcane them to death.
Yeah.
I don't think that's super relevant, but I think it is worth the sideboard slot for it. But I think you are better off running Talishar as your main weapon because it swings for 4. And realistically speaking, you're not going to get many more weapon attacks than 3 in. So, definitely I would do the Talishar more often than not. But yeah, that's Moonwish Cano. Now we get to the decks we're not as familiar with. This is the new stuff. So this is Fae, which you built a Fae deck.
I did. I built 2.
And I think this is looking very similar to your Fae deck, just maybe not quite as into the 0 cost.
Yeah, so this is more in line with my first deck that I built.
Although, I think a lot of these are 0 cost, right?
Yes, probably.
0 cost. Oh, there's a 1 cost. Oh, interesting. Wonder why he does that one. I haven't seen that much. It's a 1 cost, and if you have 2 or more Draconic Chain Links, it has go again.
Right.
Which I think everything else is like Draconic here. Aside from like Salt the Wound, Flying Kick. Man, I hate that you can't see the full card here.
Try going from the bottom, like going all the way down, and then no, all the way down to the bottom of the page, and then move your mouse physically.
Yes.
Then come up. Nope. Okay.
They would have done the same thing from here.
Well.
Okay, hang on. Let's do this.
Some web formats do it that way.
Let's do this. Let's see if this works a little bit better. Okay, this will work a little bit better.
Okay.
I'll switch back to the other thing because I do like the formatting better on that. But oh yeah, this is not quite as hard into the 0 cost. There's a number of 1 costs here.
Yeah. So I originally had a deck that was very similar to this, but I went with the 0 cost because it was more consistent.
Consistent?
Yes.
Yeah.
This deck can probably hit slightly higher damage average, but it's also likely to stall more often.
Your deck is the one you'd rather be playing against Icelander with, and this is the one you'd be less happy to be playing against Icelander with.
Maybe?
Because if I Frostbite you once, you're just going to have to pitch 1 card to attack. Yeah. Whereas if I Frostbite this Soaring Strike, it now costs 2. Yep. Which there's not a ton of blue cards in this deck. So, I mean, it's still a decent number. That's, what, 10? 10 plus 6 yellow. But it is still predominantly red.
Yep.
Which is interesting, to say the least. Oh, now it's doing it. Wait.
Yep.
Oh, what? Why don't they all do that?
Like, yeah, that's what I thought.
What? Okay. Regardless, and they do have a lot of 0 costs here, though, with, like, Rising Resentment. And I suppose with Rising Resentment in here, you have it, but, like, this one will actually benefit from it.
Yes. I think in my deck, Rising Resentment does nothing. It's just like a...
Yeah, it's just a 0 cost attack with Go again.
And Draconic.
But yeah, in this one, that's true. He does make the deck a lot more of a 0 cost deck by turning his 1 cost into 0 costs off that. And he has all 6 copies.
Yep.
2 Phoenix Flames makes sense. Has the Lava Burst finisher. Do you have that in yours? It is 0 cost.
Yeah.
Okay. Inflame, also 0 cost. Flying Kick, I'm totally okay with this. This is just a great finisher. Like, I'd even be fine if you put 2 copies of this in your 0 cost one. Because it's like, you're almost never going to use it, but when you do.
Right.
It is expensive. That's the one downside. So maybe Push the Point is better, but I think it's a close enough call to say.
Right.
Essentially, Push the Point does something very similar to this. It costs 1. It attacks for 4, I think. I should really know this. It's one of my favorite cards. I feel like I put it in our top 10 list. Am I spelling it wrong? Did I? Oh, I have it still.
Wizard.
That would help. Push the point. Yep, there we go. Oh, it is +2. Okay.
Okay.
All right, that does change things somewhat. Maybe I would lean towards push the point then, because essentially it does 1 less damage, but it's kind of easier to do, because it only costs 1, swings for 4, and then the requirement is slightly different. For Flying Kick, as long as you play it 3 or higher, it'll get the +2, but push the point, the previous attack has to have hit.
Yeah.
But if it does, you get the +2 as well. And it costs 1 less, so I would say that's the biggest thing, is maybe push the point over this, but it's hard to say. He has enough ways to pay for it. Maybe it's fine.
He does have Brand the Cinderclaw, which does turn non-draconic attacks into draconic, but that doesn't really apply to Flying Kick, because that's more of a finisher.
Yes. Yeah. I think if you're going to put non-draconic things into the deck, the ones to do are the finishers, because you've already played all of your cards that care about draconic chain links, and then you're just like, okay, now I hit you for a bunch.
I think the only way it would matter is if you play it and then give it go again for some reason. Yeah,
that's true. Which
it's a possibility.
Does Tide Flippers do that again? Yes, but not for Flying Kick.
No, that's fine.
But for some other things, it could do that.
I think in mine I had Snapdragon Scalers, which I forget if that would apply either. I don't remember how that works.
That one's based off cost. So that would apply to more things. It wouldn't apply to Flying Kick, but if you swap Flying Kick for Push the Point, yeah, it's one or less.
Yeah.
But if you switch for Push the Point, then you could.
Okay.
So I don't know. That's just something that I would think of. Maybe might be worth the change. The only reason I think about that is that like Fae and Dromai both are pretty red heavy, and while this deck is not super red heavy, 2 is a lot to pay for, especially where this is going to be going on the battlefield, which is chain length 3 or higher. By that point, you're definitely on like food stamps as far as the resources go.
Unless you're playing all 0 drops.
Yes, which he's not doing a ton. So it just seems kind of rough.
Which is one of the reasons why I switched to the 0 cost deck.
Yeah, I could see that. So yeah, that'd be the biggest thing I could think of. It's maybe swapping that out for something a little bit cheaper. There's also something that I think we're going to see a little bit more commonly with his, and I really don't get it.
Helios Mitra.
He puts this in so many decks, and I want to understand, but I don't.
Maybe he just wants it to be good.
So the thing with this is that it's good, quote unquote, at absorbing arcane damage because it can stack on the same source of damage. And it also stops non-specified damage. So it works for anything that's going to deal non-arcane, non-physical damage. But it's so expensive. Yeah. Like, to block 3 damage, you're pitching 2 blue cards.
Mm-hmm.
That's obscene. That is obscene. And I just don't see a world in which that wins you a game. I feel like you saved yourself 1 turn to just die the next turn because you emptied your hand. And it blows itself up, so you can only do that once. So, I don't know. I don't see it, but...
I mean, maybe there's a turn where they're doing crazy amounts of arcane damage and you have to pitch your whole hand.
Maybe. But then, like, they could probably do it again.
Yeah. If they did it once, they can probably do it again.
Otherwise, the rest of the equipment, I think, looks pretty fine. The gloves that boost Phoenix Flames seems fine.
I don't think I had that in my deck.
No, I think you went with Stubby Hammers, which
makes more sense.
I think Stubby Hammers does have a higher damage potential, but Heatwave has Quell. Although, right. How often are you going to use it? Because if you Quell, this is a card that has two things on it, but you can't use both. Because when are you going to Quell on your own turn? At least in Commoner.
I think it's possible, but not very likely.
Yeah.
At
least not at this time. Because I was going to say, most of the things that deal damage to you on your own turn... I mean, I guess if you're playing against, Wizard, maybe you use against Wizard. But other than that, everything else that deals damage to you on your turn is, rare or higher.
However, if you're planning against Wizard, you would want it in your sideboard, I would think.
That's probably true, and also still, you probably would bring Null Rune in over this, because I think Null Rune is in there, isn't it? Or is it not? Oh, no, there is no Null Rune. He's really... Okay, so you're just...
Null Rune doesn't break, right?
Yes, it's Arcane Berry. You can just use it as many times as possible. But I guess his plan is just to Quell. And then Tide Flippers. Right. But Arcane Barrier 1 is very low for playing against Wizard. Unless you're playing against Icelander a lot. That can get you a lot farther against her because she's blue heavy. Vesta First Fist, that's perfectly fine. That's every ninja staple card. Mm-hmm. Hope Merchant's Hood, that's basically the first card into every single deck you and I make, unless it happens to be one of the lucky few that has a better headpiece.
I don't remember what I used.
It's usually Hope Merchants. Well, because the choice is Hope Merchants, Ragamuffins, or Talismanic Lens.
I don't think I used either of those, so maybe it was just Hope Merchants?
I feel like maybe. I can't think of any other hat he would have available.
I don't think the ninja headwear applied.
I think the ninja headwear is legendary or higher.
There's a common one, isn't there?
Is there a common one?
I don't remember.
I should look that up. Let's look at actually let's just look at all common. Oh, I can't search by hats, can I? Specifically. Alright, ninja common equipment.
I'm just looking at the deck.
Yeah.
It is Hope Merchants.
Okay. That makes sense. That does make sense. Yeah, because the other equipment was the breaking scales, which is not good at all in a Fae deck where you have no combo cards.
Nope.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think this totally makes sense. Tide Flippers, I don't hate it. It's a slightly more conditional Snapdragon Scalers, but the fact that it comes with Arcane Barrier makes it so good. So, I think it's totally reasonable.
Right.
He's got Breaking Scales on the sideboard, which I assume... Wait a minute. Oh, man. Salt the Wound is not a combo card, right?
No.
Okay.
I think it's more of a...
It
doesn't get combos, but it's better to play it towards the end of the chain, because it gets +1 or something like that for every card played before it.
Yes, everything that hits, it gets +1 for, I believe.
Okay, that's what it was.
I think I'm going to be disappointed here. They're... Okay. I mean...
What does Breaking Scales do?
Okay, you know what? Never mind. I'm okay with this. Did
I put that in there?
It's pointless. The inclusion of Breaking Scales here is quote-unquote pointless because the top half of it will never occur. But what we see in the sideboard here, you and I prefer Ironhide. He is going Iron Rot.
Okay.
And if you're going to have a full sideboard of Iron Rot equipment for aggro matchups, it's perfectly fine to take Breaking Scales because it's just an Iron Rot that doesn't break.
Okay. Yeah, I have Ironhide.
Yeah. I personally prefer Ironhide. I think that's probably the better pick, but if you are going to go Iron Rot, it's totally justifiable to take Breaking Scales just because you like Breaking Scales better. Because effectively it's the same thing, except it doesn't break, but it doesn't matter because you'll never use the top half.
Yeah, I did stubby hammers for my arms.
I thought at first he had Ironhide here, in which case it would have been weird to do Breaking Scales if you think Ironhide is better. But since he is doing Iron Rot, it does make a lot of sense. And then he has Sash of Sandakai in here, which I don't know why you would sideboard it in, but if he's doing it as like a...
It's another...
Like a test thing?
Maybe.
Or if maybe you bring it into a matchup where you think it's going to be very hard for you to get on hit effects, so you think Sash is better than Vest.
I went Blossom.
Yeah, which is kind of a similar logic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate Sash.
I think I went Blossom because I didn't care about action, like...
Oh, action versus instant, because you were always going to start with the Sash or whatever?
I don't remember.
Or you can start with Blossoming or whatever, like crack it at the beginning, and then just start playing all your 0 costs until you get to the thing that spends it. Like, it's not like it vanishes.
I don't think it interrupts Draconic Chains. I don't remember.
No, it does. If you crack it in the middle. But, like, it's the same thing as, like, with Dash and using stuff like Goliath Gauntlets, is you can always crack it at the beginning, and it'll just take effect as soon as you hit something that has that cost. So you can always start off the turn with that and then start building your chain.
Yep.
But yeah, I can see why you would do Sash, just because it's this... In the right deck, it's effectively the same thing, just at instant speed.
Right.
The problem here being that his deck is almost half non-red cards, and you have to have played a red card to activate it.
Yep.
But like Dromai, I put this in, or considered this anyways. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. The biggest complaint I have in this equipment sideboard thing is the Helios Mitra. I don't see why he loves it so much.
Yeah.
But I would put a Null Rune Hood here. And yes, there is slowly becoming more and more non-specified damage that blasts you, but I don't think it's necessarily enough to really be
right at this point
worried about it.
Really, I mean, maybe he's planning for
the future
possibilities.
Yeah,
but I mean, you could always just change it rather than gimping yourself in the beginning.
I could put matchup guides here.
Ooh.
Huh. Interesting. Alright, well that was Faye. And then posted on the same day, we have a Zalian commoner. Is this modern, or did he... Because I know he made a deck list a while ago. This says my favorite Everfest commoner, so I'm going to guess this is pre-Uprising, but post-Everfest, which means it's probably not missing much. Because not a lot came out in Uprising.
I don't really see any new cards. I don't... Oh, well, maybe Fatigue Shot.
Sleep Dart.
Oh, okay.
That's Everfest, I believe. Man,
I think
I hate the formatting.
I think Fatigue Shot is as well.
Yes, correct. Yeah, I mean, this looks very similar to all of the Ranger decks we've talked about. Yep. Very red heavy. Got a few blues here, but... Headshot, okay.
Okay, they have Memorial Ground as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I did mention that I've heard people talk about it, because it gets back most of your cards, and that's semi-relevant for Ranger in the sense that you need those cards to do damage.
More arrows. Wait, what does it bring back? Is it attack or...
Well,
of course.
So here's the thing.
It's in that perfect position.
Yeah, alright, so flip back to this view. It's attack action cards that cost 1 or less.
Okay.
So that should hit every single attack action card in the deck, I think. Ridge Rider, yes. Yeah, it gets everything.
What about read the glide
So
path?
the argument is you could have Memorial Ground or you could have arrows. So if you think about it, the Memorial Ground is kind of like... And actually, you know what? I think it's better into this particular deck than I'm giving credit. Oh, I can just click on it. I'm an idiot.
I think you did that before, too. And
I did it on the other format. For some reason, I thought it might work only on that one, and yeah, that's on me. The one thing that this does, and so the thought is you need arrows to deal damage, so ways to get your arrows back makes sense. But you could just replace this with a different arrow. But
it is instant speed.
This is essentially like another red one. Now, the quote-unquote problem here is that the card doesn't come back to your hand, so it's not exactly the same as having another arrow.
Right.
But it goes to the top of your deck, and Azalea does care about the top of your deck.
Oh, it does say top. Okay. I was going to say it's kind of like that one arrow that just goes to the bottom of your deck.
Yeah, salvage shot.
Yes.
Yep. But in her case, she puts a card from your arsenal on the bottom of your deck, and then if so, you put the top card face up in your arsenal, and it gains Dominate if it's an arrow. So this lets you do some dirty things where you Memorial Ground things back on top, then Azalea to swap it with the arrow that's in there. And it puts it face up, which is also relevant for a lot of the early arrows. So, like, this gives you a 6 power headshot with Dominate by Memorial Grounding it on top and then doing that. So, yeah. There's definitely some values to Memorial Ground in the deck.
I like Memorial Ground.
Yeah, I think it's okay in the right deck, and I think Azalea is the best case for it.
I think I like it because I used it in some of my previous decks, even though it didn't work. I liked my concept.
Yeah, the idea was sound. And then everything else here I like. Ridge Rider is the opt one. Okay, which is a little bit odd, but not that crazy. I mean, I like having the Sikkim shots for go again, but realistically speaking, how often are you going to be doing multiple things a turn with your ranger?
Right.
That's all arrows, so I can see going Ridge Rider for opting because opting is good with Azalea. Let's see, Death Dealer, interesting. This I'm a little bit surprised by because everyone talked about how good Redliner was, which you do have. It is a rare, but that is something you can use in Azalea.
True.
I mean, I like the fact that this draws you cards, and there's a certain argument to make that having to pay for it is worth the extra card it gives you. But
and with Memorial Ground, you can, like, if you're
put something on top and then draw.
If you're not using Azalea's ability, you can use the Death Dealer's ability.
Aside from that, we have Bullseye Bracer, which is just good. If you have no cards in your arsenal, you can put an arrow in it, and it gains +1. And it has Arcane Barrier. You have Honing Hood, which can also put things into your arsenal, which is good. Snapdragon Scalers gives any card in your deck go again. Vest of the First Fist. Interesting. I mean, I don't hate it. I don't know what we... Oh, for Lexi, we... I don't know what we did for Lexi, because we have Code of Frost, but...
Yes.
But I forget if we did, or what our greed pick was. I kind of like it, though. This could convince me very easily.
That Code of Frost was both the greed and...
No, it was sideboard, I think. Okay. I think it was sideboard. I just sideboarded it in against Briar. For obvious reasons, I think. I like this, though. I could be convinced by this. Now, I think we said this about an Azalea deck in the last one of these videos we did where we looked at other people's decks, but I could just pick up this Azalea deck and be pretty happy, I think.
Yeah, I like this.
I don't think there's anything I'm seeing here that I really dislike. If I did get this deck, I think I might replace the Iron Rot with Ironhide, but that's not something I'm ever going to look at someone and be like, I'm mad at their deck building. That's just personal preference. And then 3 sources. Oh, I did not notice that.
Yep.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. There are quite a few bad hits here, but it's never going to do 0. At worst, it's 2 damage with Go Again. And it costs 0, which is awesome. So you can always start your turn with this and then arrow them. So.
I always like a Ravenous Rabble.
Yeah, it's a card that you and I never looked at before Briar. And now we've found so many decks that to slide it into.
Did we put it in our top 10? Or did we start liking it after the top 10? Or 5 or whatever?
I think we did.
Okay.
I think we did. I think Briar existed by the time we did that episode, but I'm not 100% sure. If it's not, that's a criminal exclusion. Mm-hmm. But to be fair, Ravenous Rabble was a Briar card, and it was basically just a Briar card.
Right.
Now it's become incredibly good. I mean, obviously you could have always put it in Azalea, I suppose, but she didn't get played that much. But now there's like Dromai and Faye who can all use this and love it.
So the reveal works well with...
Oh yeah, it tells you what's on top too. Okay. Oh, you're right. Oh, that's brilliant. I didn't even think about that. It's basically opt 1.
Yeah.
It's just opt 1 where you can't manipulate it, but you can do this and be like, okay, is that arrow better than the one I currently have? Oh, I love that.
That's cool.
I didn't even think of it. That's the coolest use of Ravenous Rabble I've ever heard of. Mm-hmm. Like Briar and like Dromai and all that are using it in the greediest way possible, where it's just 0 cost go again, red card. But wow, that's cool. Yeah, okay. I mean, I've talked about making Azalea at some point. This is I like this. This is the best one of his decks I've seen yet, I think. And I know this used to be his favorite hero, so that may be part of it.
The only things I guess we would change is the Iron Rat.
Yeah, I would probably swap it for Iron.
That's
Iron
more
Hide.
of a
it's not like
preference.
Nothing to hate him for, anyways. It's definitely just that kind of thing. Whispers is wild to me, but obviously has uses. Opt is good in this.
Yeah.
This is one of the sad things, is that Azalea is one of the best places to use Talismanic Lens, but Honing Hood is just better.
It is, yeah.
Oh, it's just sad. Oh, he's Scar for Scar, too. Huh. He's less arrow dependent than I thought. But still a lot of arrows. Nimblism's fine. That seems good. The choice of arrows seem fine. I don't think there's anything we're missing here that's like super, super bad or anything.
We might change out a couple arrows, because I think we did look at some decks, or we've built a deck for our Ranger before.
We looked at one.
I remember we were looking into...
There were some arrows we didn't like that they used,
right?
I think. That we especially thought of because we had just recently fixed the Lexi deck.
Yep.
This
is perfectly fine.
The only other thing I would say with this one, maybe, is that this seems like a lot of non-attacks to a certain degree. Maybe more than I would ideally like.
Yeah, I was just thinking we're more of the aggressive type.
We are a little bit.
So we would probably put it more arrow heavy.
What I was expecting to see a lot more of is that he has a lot of decks in which he uses a lot of defense reactions. We have not seen a single defense reaction yet, and we are 3 decks in.
That is true.
I was expecting to see a lot more, because that's the big difference between his decks, I've noticed, and our decks, is that we never put defense reactions in.
And
we just go aggro.
There is that defense reaction, I think it's Rise Above, which puts a card
on top?
On top?
Yeah, it can.
Which would play well with Azalea.
It could. I don't
exactly
like that one, though.
But I just mean, like...
Yeah. I think a better one for Azalea, if you're going to put defense reaction, is the same one you put with Cano. The Fate for Scene. Where it's just 0 cost block 4, but then you opt.
Okay.
I think that's probably the one you would do over Rise Above. Although Rise Above lets you control that a certain degree. But my biggest concern here is we have 4 Whispers of the Oracle, 2 yellow, 2 blue. We have Read the Glide Path, all 3 colors. We have Memorial Ground, and then we have Nimblism, we have Overflex. There is a non-zero number of times that you are going to brick.
Yeah.
With just a bunch of non-attack actions and stuff. And let me just make sure I'm right on this. That does that. That does that. And where's Honing Hood? Okay. Honing Hood can do it. Everything else that puts stuff into your arsenal only puts arrows. So if you brick, you can use, like, you have a bunch of non-attack action cards. You can use Honing Hood to put one of them in your arsenal, fire off a Whispers of the Oracle to try and find an arrow, and then Azalea to flip it.
Okay.
But that's going to work once.
Yeah.
That's going to work once, because it's only Honing Hood that lets you put any card in your arsenal.
Yeah, and it's kind of a waste of Honing Hood.
It is kind of a waste.
But I mean, at that point, if you're kind of bricked, you want it.
Yeah, you have to do it, kind of thing. But that's the one thing, is I feel like there's a little more Whispers here than necessary. That's the big one I'd say. I'd probably keep Read the Glide Path sooner, because that opts and pumps.
Yes.
Whereas these just opt, and they opt for more, but I think I would probably trim one of these, either the blue or the yellow, and replace it with another arrow. But I don't hate that. It's just me personally. I think I would want to go
this
more.
This is minor tweaks.
Yeah.
Because it's more personalized. How we would play. And
then that probably gives us a few more, like, Swiss Army knife kind of arrows to throw in there for more situations. I'd also have to look into Archer again more, because I look at this and nothing seems wrong about it. But I distinctly remember you and I swapping this card out for something quite a lot.
Yeah, and I don't remember what it is.
I don't.
Really annoying.
I don't, but that's the one other concern I'd see here is I saw this searing shot, and I just remember that you and I have, like, there's so many times it didn't make the cut, and I can't remember why. I can't remember if that was Lexi specific.
It might have been Lexi
or if it was
specific.
Just Archer in general.
I don't remember.
It's just like, I think I remember that there was a lot of 5-power arrow attacks.
With on-hit effects or something.
Yeah, or like, just in general, like, a 5-power attack effectively does the same thing as Searing Shot.
Yeah. I can't remember.
Yeah, that's the only other thing I'd say.
It might be in one of our previous videos.
Oh, it definitely is. It's probably in the one where we looked at other people's decks.
Yeah.
I think they did Searing Shot, and we talked about this conversation of replacing it.
We're kind of too lazy to look back, so I mean, if there's some kind person in the comments to make a reference so we can figure that out. That'd be great.
The other thing is, I don't know if it was, like, if you're keeping it for the 0 cost aspect, I don't know if the 5-power arrow was 0 cost. So maybe it's, so it is something like that, where maybe it's the case that you just want the red more than, like, a 0 cost that's one of these colors.
Right.
So I don't automatically hit it. He seems to be using all of the right arrows, like the big ones that we would want you to do, because he's doing Sleep Dart, he's doing Fatigue Shot, and Fatigue Shot was one of the ones that a lot of people didn't do. I think I remember it.
Was it Tenacious or something?
I think you got the letter right.
It starts with a T.
I think it's Timidity Point.
Timidity, yeah.
I don't remember how to spell it. That's not how.
I think...
Are you still on the... I cleared the... All right. Timidity Point. 5 power, 1 cost. When it hits a hero attacks they control, lose, and can't gain dominate.
Okay. So that's more...
I don't know if I would replace the Searing Shot with it, but that may be the new attack that I slide in by removing 1 non-attack. I might go Timidity Point, just because there are so many good matchups for that now, where cutting Dominate can be good. But yeah, I don't hate... I'd have to look deeper into the arrow choices to see if I would keep Searing Shot or replace it. But these are all, like, splitting hairs here. Like, all of these things are personal choice.
Yep.
If you don't want to think about it, you just want to find someone... You want to play Azalea, and you just want to find someone's deck list and try it to see if you like her.
Very good option.
Yeah, perfect. I would have no issues picking this up and playing it. This is definitely a fun deck. It's just... You and I have played at least a little bit of Archer enough now that personally we would tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, just tiny tweaks.
But, yeah.
Little bit of sideboard.
Yeah, a little bit of sideboard adjustment. And again, that's only because we like Ironhide. And there's definitely an argument for doing Iron Rot over Ironhide and Azalea, especially if you do what I was talking about of cutting like one of these Whispers and replacing it with another red card. It starts to get expensive to pay for Ironhide.
True.
But I still probably would. But yeah, I love this. This is my favorite one we've seen so far. Because there's nothing I see about this and dislike. Whereas, like, even the Fae, I see stuff like... Some of it were minor tweaks, like Flying Kick for Push the Point, in my personal opinion. But then, like, some of it was like Helios Mitri. I don't like it. Maybe I will change my mind eventually. Okay. Icelander. This is... Oh, okay. Oh!
Yes. You immediately saw the Helios?
I saw both of these.
Yeah.
I hate both of these. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. The one thing I will say here is for Icelander is that Icelander does have a lot of really fringe equipment. So she is kind of weird to build because, like, it's the only deck where you notice the 11 card limit on your sideboard more so than any other because you have things like Code of Frost where it's like, I mean, I think Code of Frost is more usable in a wizard than any of the others. Like, you could have that as your default chess piece and not hate it. Mm-hmm. But, like, Glacial Horns is not super relevant.
Right.
It's good if you're going to play against Archer. It's good if you're going to play against Dromai. But outside of that, like, you run into Runeblade, and this could do nothing. Yeah. If they keep emptying their hand and not arsenaling anything, you're doing nothing. So she does have a lot of weird pieces like that, where you're like, okay, some matchups this is amazing, some matchups this is terrible. So she is hard to build a sideboard for, but like, what world? In what world are we doing Helios Mitra and Quelling Slippers?
Right.
I mean, yes, we have so much resources to pay for it, but I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Yeah. I'd have to look at my Icelander list again to see exactly what he's missing, but, like, mine is so much more greedy, for starters.
Of course.
I've got Hope Merchant's Hood, I'm almost certain. I have probably Deep Blue. That's probably the chess piece I went with. I've definitely come around on Deep Blue a lot. So, probably Deep Blue is in there.
Welcome.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. You've sold me on Deep Blue. Yeah, I don't like Quelling. I don't like it. It's so expensive. It's one use only, which, like, to me, it's like, it can hit physical, it can hit arcane, it can hit non-specified, but it's only going to save you once, and to me, that means you're probably still going to die.
Right. Well, I think technically you can't just use it once, right? You can use it as many times as, or is that?
Yes, on that one turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You can use it for multiple sources in that single turn, but you're going to have to pay for every one of those.
Yes.
And then it's gone after that, so it only saves you one turn. So I hate most of this. I'm okay with Waning Moon. Conduit's great, and again, Glacial Horns really is a sideboard piece. So this part I'm cool with. Iron Rot Helm, I would do Ironhide, but
Quelling kind of reminds me of that Spellfray cloak, or
it is probably better than Spell Void.
Spell Void.
Well, it is Spellfray, but the ability is called Spell Void.
Okay.
But it is Spellfray cloak and Spellfray gloves, that kind of thing.
Those cards are so weird because they're rares.
They're rares, yeah. That's what really shoots them. It's like you're never going to use your rare slot for it.
Even if you did, there's still, you wouldn't use it.
Yeah. Right off the bat, I do like this spread, mostly blue. I run some yellows, but I think I only run yellow snapback.
Okay.
So I just have less reds, more yellows. And honestly, I don't know that mine is the right way to do it. Yes, I love this. So rude. But, like, this is definitely what you could do with an Icelander turn. It's just for your turn, here's 3 Frostbite tokens. Pass. Arsenal a card. Draw back up. And then you play something on their turn, and now they have 4 Frostbite tokens. If it's an ice card, anyways. And then using a red card for Aether Hail, which deals a ton of damage. Makes sense. This is something I disliked and saw a lot of people doing, and then literally last night I was just looking at it again. I'm like, you know what? Honestly, maybe you are willing to pay 3 for this kind of effect. Because dealing 5 arcane damage is almost impossible for your opponent to block all of it.
Right.
From one source. So they're going to take the damage, which means they're going to take the damage and discard a card. Or pay 2 for that as well, which is still them losing a card. So it's like, the more I look at this card, the more I'm like, you know, maybe this really is the kind of finisher you want. Because you're going to force damage through.
It seems fairly simple to play it in this deck.
Yes.
Because
you need the ice fuse, but you have so much ice to fuse it. You have so many blue to pay for it. Yeah. And also, too, because of the fact that they can't, like, most people will not be able to absorb it. If you're really good at Icelander and your local playgroup knows this and they hate you for it, you might run into someone who has 4 pieces of Null Rune and a Lantern, and they can absorb the full damage.
Or
you just made them pay that much.
Or they have so much quelling.
Yeah, true. Oh, man, how much would that... That's 8? No, it's... Well, okay. So, off of a normal quelling...
It's 1E?
Wait, let me look up quelling. Can that only do one source? The hero would be dealt damage. Okay. So, why is Helios... Oh, that's what it is. Okay. Yeah, so Helios Mitra is considered better than quelling... Because quelling says if you would be dealt damage, you may pay 1 you may pay 1 red to prevent 1 of that damage. So this works like Arcane Barrier. It prevents 1 from a single source. Okay. So you can't use quelling multiple times.
Okay.
But you can use Helios Mitra. Okay. So you can absorb all 5 with Helios Mitra.
You just have to pay 10.
Yes.
Okay. Jeez.
Which means, you know what? You're right. Aether and Iron Vein, Ice Vein did not hit you, but it made you discard 4 cards.
So that's so much.
And they're all blue.
I'd rather take the damage and discard a card than discard that many cards.
Exactly. And that's why I'm coming around to red Aether Ice Vein. It's just a good card no matter what happens.
And even me trying to play Devil's Advocate for Helios Mitra. Jeez.
This is why I don't like Mitra. This is why I don't like it. You did come up with one of the best uses of Mitra, and it costs 10 resources. What? And again, that's what's good about Ice Vein, is that because it deals 5 damage, almost no one can Arcane Barrier that. And even if they do, they're still paying 5, which means that they're losing multiple cards, which means you've accomplished what you set out to do regardless.
You'd have to discard at least 3 blues and 1 red.
Yeah, or 2 blues, 2 yellows, some combination of that. Or you're using equipment.
It would have to be 4.
Yeah, the only way you don't lose 4 cards is using equipment.
Yes.
And most that would be able to make up that difference will cost you a card, like Deep Blue.
I mean, I guess maybe it would be worth it in the long run to block 5 damage and then just reset.
Well, I mean, in theory, pitching the card is better than discarding the card because it goes back into your deck. So that should always be better in general. But I mean, like, you could still just, like, pitch a card to pay for the discard.
Right.
But I think that's also what makes Ice Vein a great finisher, is that you are presenting a really bad situation for your opponent. Because they're actually incentivized in a weird way to not block the damage.
Yep.
Because it's 5, so unless you have a ridiculous setup, you are going to take damage guaranteed. And so for a lot of people, they'll look at that and be like, well, then I'm just going to pitch for the discard clause and not block any of it, which means you're killing your opponent.
Yeah. So he gives, like, this format gives play by play, right?
For what?
Like matchups?
Oh, I don't think he's filled it out for any of this stuff.
I was gonna say
he probably does talk about some of it in the video, though.
I was gonna say maybe he has like a way to explain Helios Mitra, like why he likes it, and You know, he just can't figure it out.
So he does in the videos a little bit, I think, but I've never been convinced by it.
Okay.
I think it's mostly what he's talking about is like the flexibility, since you can use on any source of damage, including non-specified. But the problem for me is it never outweighs the cost.
Yeah.
Because you're paying 2 to block 1. You're paying 2 for an Iron Rot affecting everything. And yes, you can block more than that, but the cost just keeps going up. So that's my concern.
More flexibility is not necessarily better.
Yes.
It's like trying to push a rope.
Yeah, you have to weigh the cost of it. I did just look at under stats here. His pitch value 26 blue is very, very good. I wanted to see that. I think 1426 is probably something perfectly fine. The reason for all this is that Icelander likes blue strip cards because you can play it on the opponent's turn. And he also has a high number of ice cards here, 24. So, like, 2 in every 4 cards should be ice. So, fusing things like Ice Vein should be trivial. Frosting is fine. I'm not running this, but I get why people are doing it because it's 0 cost 3.
Yeah. I think that's a decent card.
Ice Bolt, this makes sense. This is like one of your best finishers because it's 2 for 5 damage. It's Voltaic Bolt, but ice. Polar Cap, that's 4 damage, and it can create Frostbite tokens. Yeah, I mean, I don't hate this. There's one question mark I have here, but it's not bad.
Is it Cold Snap?
No, it's the choice of using Frosting over Icebind. Because Icebind does the same thing, only if it was fused, it freezes a card in their arsenal, which in theory gives you more, but the difference is this is elemental and this is ice. So if you want it there to increase your ice number so you can fuse these things, there's an argument for doing Frosting over Icebind.
Right.
But Icebind does everything Frostbind does and just has an additional thing it can do if you fuse it.
What does Cold Snap do again? It freezes as well?
It freezes, yes. I'm going to have to click on that. Yeah, if they don't pay money, it freezes an arsenal or ally. And then if you play from your arsenal, you draw a card, which that is very nice.
Money?
Because that is, yeah, well, okay, it costs resources. But that is one of the nice things about it. And also, too, the other good thing here...
me a $5 bill.
...is it has Go Again.
Right.
So you can even play this on your turn.
Okay.
So you could always arsenal this, and then if your opponent does nothing, so you don't play it on their turn, then you just go back to your turn, play it, draw a card, and then you can continue going. So I do like it. It is more situational, so I don't think you go more than the 2 copies, but Icelander really can get away with throwing every single blue card like possible in her deck and just be like, yeah, it's fine. The only difference I have here is I run all 3 colors of Snapback, and I think there's a lot of argument to not. I love Snapback because it lets you do multiple things a turn a lot. I don't know, since I haven't really had many opportunities to play test Icelander yet, I don't know how relevant that is for her because she wants to play so much on the other person's turn and always wants to have something in the arsenal, so I don't know how much you can really be doing multiple things a turn. But I like the idea that on your opponent's turn you can fire something from arsenal and Snapback and activate your weapon. Which I do think Waning Moon is a lot... I have a feeling this ends up being one of your largest ways of killing your opponent. It's just Waning Mooning them on their turn every time. And you can only activate if you played a non-attack action card this turn, so you do have to play some from your arsenal to Waning Moon, but that's what you're doing anyways. I do think Polar Cap's a little bit odd, but not horrible. I'm starting to see what they're going for a lot here is red cards that have some good effect attached to it that slow your opponent down.
I do like Frostbite. I mean, not used against me, but...
You've learned how good it is from that, though.
Yes. I think I learned before that.
That's probably true.
Made my Lexi deck.
Yeah. Yep. And then we get to blue stuff. I definitely have the blue Aether Ice Vein. I think I don't have the red one, but I think over the course of this video and the brief thought last night while re-sleeving my Icelander deck, I think I'm sold.
Okay.
On the red Ice Vein, and I always had the blue because it is good. It's really good. Basically all the same cards we had above, just a few new ones like Amulet of Ice, perfectly fine. You can play this on your turn, play it on their turn, doesn't matter. It's an ice card, it's blue, it's non-attack action, so you can play it on their turn. All sorts of good. Arctic Incarceration, same thing. You play this on their turn, you actually give them 2 Frostbite tokens because of Icelander. It's an ice card too, so it helps for all the fusing. This is also an ice card. Ice Bolt because Voltic Bolt is insane. I think that's the big difference. I was using a lot more generic wizard stuff. Like, I have Voltic Bolt in mine. And he's not running any copies of Voltic Bolt, which is probably fine.
Because he's running more ice heavy?
Yeah, a little more of, like, some of the ice matters and ice cards.
Yeah.
He is running Pry, which I'm running Pry. Love it. This card sucked in Cano. Great in Icelander. It's just a fun card. It's just a fun card.
I
and
like
cost
the
0.
art too.
Yeah, the art is really, really sweet. And I have this in foil. It is a nice foil as well. Icebind makes sense. It's one of those things where you're dealing 1 arcane damage to them, and most people would not want to absorb that, but then it has this effect that matters, so they're going to want to.
Mm-hmm.
And making your opponent do things they don't want to is the name of the game.
Of course.
Winter's Bite, love that.
And the name of the game is Control. Did I break your brain?
Nope.
This broke your brain?
Yep.
Okay.
Why is this here? Oh, I love the deck until this moment. Aside from the sideboard. The sideboard's trash. This is trash. This is just awful.
So we'll give it a C. How about that?
I mean, I think it's better than a C.
Yeah? C plus?
Well, because right off the bat, like, seeing how red heavy he is making me think that I should change my Icelander deck to be a little more red heavy. Okay. And if you can teach me things with the deck, like with your deck list, that's better than a C.
Okay, a B.
I don't know in what world you would ever justify the Winter's Grasp. You can't play this on their turn.
Nope.
First off, like, this can't be played on their turn. So then why even bother with the blue? I'd have to look into it. Maybe he's running all the other ice cards, so this was just like, I need one more ice card.
Blue.
But, like, you're at 24 ice right now, which means your odds are 2 in every 4. And if so the times you brick should be very low.
If you think about it, 22 is a more round number than 24 because it's 2
is.
and 2. Now we're getting into,
I guess. But realistically speaking, I think you're better off with a Voltic Bolt here, which is 2 cost, deal 3 arcane damage. That's blue, so you can play it on your opponent's turn. And yeah, it won't be ice, but you'll still have 22 ice cards.
Yep.
20 if you drop the red frosting for Icebind, but you don't have to do that. So, I don't know, I hate this. I hate any deck that runs...
You don't hate the deck.
I don't hate the deck. I hate this card.
You hate the player.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I've seen so many people put Winter's Grasp in, and not a single person has been able to convince me of it. Like, it's just bad. It's 2 costs, 4 damage. Mm-hmm. You could throw a red Scar for Scar in and deal the same amount of damage. And have go again. Because you have less health than your opponent. Because you're Icelander. And yeah, it's not... I think you do want to replace this with a blue card. Because I think, if I recall correctly, it's like 26 blue right now. Which I think going below that starts to get risky. So okay. I think you do want to replace it with a blue card. But that's why I say, like, Voltic Bolt. I don't think you want the Icelander is less punishing to have attacks in the deck than Cano. Because if you activate Cano and flip an attack, you've just completely killed yourself. So Cano actually hurts to have attacks in, whereas Icelander does not. You just don't arsenal the attack. But this attack sucks. And I don't think it's worth it for 2 extra ice cards.
No.
And then the sideboard is awful. This is just absolutely awful. I hate it. But the deck itself, cut out the sideboard. The deck is good. Mm-hmm. And the equipment does have some things right. Like Conduit Frostburn is just good. Waning Moon is good. Because Conduit of Frostburn is actually good into most things. Because most people will arsenal a card at some point. So freezing things in the arsenal is not completely useless. It's just like, it's not going to be worth enough to include like Glacial Horns. But you have things that freeze stuff in people's arsenals, and this blows them up.
Right.
Which is just so rude, but fantastic.
It's very rude, but in the best way.
So I think this is my greed gloves, too, because here's the other thing. You're playing Wizard. And there's no Wizard gloves. There are no gloves that are good for Wizard in Commoner. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is if you're playing Battle Mage Cano, and you can use Goliath Gauntlets. And I guess you could put Goliath Gauntlets in here for your 2 Winter's Grasps when they come up. But you shouldn't have these Winter's Grasp, in which case you shouldn't have any attacks, which means Conduit of Frostburn is your best option.
Yep.
And it has Quell, so you can block anything with it.
Ooh.
Which I think is also another great argument for why these are garbage, because you're going to have the Conduit that can block the non-specified damage if you have to.
Can you use Quell on multiple sources?
You can use it on multiple sources on the same turn. But you can only use it once per source.
Right.
But you could block non-specified damage, then block the attack's damage, then block another attack's damage later on. So if you play Briar against Briar and they swing with like the Arcanic Shockwave or whatever, so it's going to deal 4 damage plus 1 Arcane because they fused it, and then they crack the gloves that do non-specified damage.
Right.
You can block the non-specified, the Arcane, and then 1 of the 4 damage for the cost of 3, which is not super bad. And yeah, so I think if you have that, there's really no reason to have any other Quell. Mm-hmm. Because you can just use this in case non-specified damage matters, and then you can put actual real cards in these slots instead. But the rest of it, I'm okay with. This should be swapped. Everything else I'm fine with here. And then the equipment sideboard needs to be like completely rebuilt from the ground up. Like this goes, this goes, this goes. You probably do leave the rest of this. Iron Rot, I would do Iron Hide, but that's personal choice. But like Null Rune Boots and Gloves, plus what's up here is already good enough for Null Rune, so you don't need any more. Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to the last deck that he has on FaBrary, which is Dash. So I'm intrigued.
Shotgun Dash.
Does he do? He does. Oh. Okay. I would be interested to see the video on this at some point.
Talishar.
Yeah, for a couple of reasons. Talishar being one of them. Especially since he calls this Shotgun Dash, which means he's almost certainly planning to play around this mostly. Mm-hmm. I don't know what world you'd bring the Talishar in that you wouldn't just like put the pistol in the sideboard instead. And just in general, I do prefer the pistol over the barrel shot.
I just had the image of like, you're holding the shotgun the way you're holding the shotgun.
Yeah.
The Talishar is also a two-handed weapon, so you hold it the same way you hold the shotgun. That's just the image that popped in my head.
Yep.
Very funny.
There's a it's at least fitting too, because the Talishar will break eventually, and if you're like shotgun slamming it into people, you'll probably break it eventually. Okay, so let's start with the sideboard. Right up the back. Achilles Accelerator. Don't hate it.
Yep.
And there's a reason for it. This actually usually ends up being my first in slot boots in general, because all of the other boots revolve around giving you action points, which this does as well.
Yep.
And you don't need them for the most part.
True.
Because most of your stuff already has it. So you're going to get almost nothing off Snapdragon and stuff like that. And the only time you would use this is if you're going to use an attack that does not have Go Again and then follow it up with a weapon. In which case Achilles Accelerator works perfectly fine.
Right.
So
okay,
and then it has Arcane Barrier stapled to it.
Based on the name of the deck, maybe that comes up more often.
I think it comes up a non-zero amount of times. Like, I almost always end up using it at some point because my deck's built around Overblast. So I'm going to Overblast, which uses up my action point because it can't boost. And then I'll use Achilles Accelerator to, like, pistol you for an extra 2. Which is not nothing. So you'll generally use it. But, like, for example, Snapdragon wouldn't work in that situation. Because Overblast costs 2.
Right.
So I can't give a go again. And Time Skippers would be miserable, absolutely miserable to pay 3 for. So it really is the best for that. Goliath Gauntlet, so many attacks cost 2 or more. So makes sense. Hardened Cross Trap, it's what I do too. Love it. Hope Merchant's Hood, it's what I do too. Love it. Deep Blue, odd choice. Don't necessarily hate it, but don't really like it either.
At least in this deck.
It's not awful, but like I don't want to be putting cards back into the deck because I want to be using them all for the chain. And so I'd rather use like Hardened Cross Traps for my free money.
I mean, maybe you can set up late game boosts.
Yeah, there are certain situations that would be good for this. The problem with Hardened Cross Traps is it reduces the next attack by 2. So if you play a 1 cost, it becomes problematic, whereas Deep Blue is just going to give you 3 to use anywhere you want.
Right.
So it's not strictly worse. Just I don't usually want to lose the card for it. Iron Rod Helm, I do Ironhide, but again, that's just the difference between him and me. No Rune Gloves, no Rune Hood, that seems fine. Best of First Fist. Okay, I think we've stumbled around the answer here. He's not using his sideboard much, and he has 2 free slots. So he's throwing in Deep Blue and Vest of the First Fist so he can just play around with it and see which of these 3 chess pieces is the best.
Okay.
Which is fine. I forgot about Vest of the First Fist. This is what I would decide between myself. And the reason for that is that Vest of the First Fist does not break the chain, so you don't have to start with it. It just gives you 2 resources, which means you can use it however you see fit. And basically what it means is you now have to pay for the first item to start your chain off, but then you don't have to pay for anything else. And there's times you can make that work.
Okay.
This does have to hit. That's the big negative, is your opponent can control whether you get it. But you can start with, like, 0 to 60. And then if it hits, you can crack Vest to pay for, like, a zipper hit for 1. And then you have Hyperdriver out, probably, because you're Dash. So now you have 2 resources floating, and you can use that for Overblast. So there's a lot of really good situations for Vest of the First Fist that Hardened Cross Traps would not help, because that would have reduced the 1 cost to 0, but you'd still have to pay the full 2 for the next thing. So there's definitely places for Vest. So I think it's perfectly fine to use either of these. I don't think you really should use the sideboard for that, but I mean, I was going to say you don't sideboard a lot with Dash, but that actually was hugely critical in me beating your Ninja deck, was because I sideboarded out 3 pieces for Ironhide and absolutely annihilated your turn because you started with the 0 cost 4 damage if it hits against Go Again, and I Ironhided it so you couldn't pump it.
So bad.
So I think you should probably replace these with like the remaining Ironhide Iron Rot pieces. And personally, I would do Ironhide. I did say I don't hate the Iron Rot, but I actually do deeply dislike it in this case. Because you are kind of a control deck where you're setting up a combo piece, you do need to block heavy early on. And Ironhide is a lot better than blocking with hand because you burn through your deck like nobody's business with boosting. So you do want to be cycling things back in rather than blocking with them and losing them.
Yep.
So I think Ironhide is actually just better in Dash specifically. But I don't super hate it. I do just think Ironhide does outweigh it. This is what I'm very curious about the video for. This is what I saw, and I was very curious.
I had a feeling.
Is why... So I know why there is a 1 of here, and that's because there's a 1 of Hyperdriver. So I'm just curious why he decided a red back alley break line was better than another Mechanologist card in another color. That seems a little bit curious. I would love to see his video to see if he discusses it. One other thing I was going to say. Plasma Barrel Shot. This is in my sideboard, but I don't know that I will ever sideboard this in. And it's just off math here. This is going to attack for X plus 1, where 1 is the number of times you've boosted this chain.
Okay.
Kind of like Overblast. It costs the same as Overblast, but Overblast does a lot more base damage. And this costs 2.
Right.
So you have to boost with something and then attack with this for it to equal the damage that the pistol does. And the pistol costs 1 less. So you have to boost twice and then play this to deal more damage than the pistol.
Right.
And it's costing you 2 to do that. And you're still only doing 3 damage. So I actually am not even sure why you would run it over Talishar. You don't always use your weapon a lot. And Talishar swings for 4 at the same cost. So it deals double what the pistol does for double the cost. But just in general, I prefer the pistol because it deals 2 damage, which is good, and that's unconditional. So as long as you have 1 resource, you can just pistol for your turn.
Right.
So when you're in the Dirtle phase, you can just be tanking and then just hitting in with the pistol for little bits of damage here and here to like weather your opponent down, which you can't do with Talishar or Plasma Barrel.
Well, maybe he's trying to use it every turn. If possible.
What, Plasma Barrel?
Yeah.
Well, see, the problem is you have to be setting up these good chains for it to start dealing as much damage as the pistol.
Right.
So, like, if all you're doing is 1 attack and then weapon attack, you're still better off using the pistol because it costs less. So, that's the problem that I see.
But if you're doing 2...
Yes, but that's using a lot then.
It is.
You're not able to block. You know what I mean? Because you have to pay for the cards you're playing. And the Plasma Barrel shot that costs 2. That's the problem I see there.
Well, maybe this is more aggro, and he doesn't block.
And well, I mean, maybe,
It
but
might
then,
be
like...
a race with a shotgun.
That seems like a mistake. Because that seems like what Dash is best at, is
You
blocking
think running
and, like,
with a
chipping.
shotgun is a mistake?
and also, that's why I think Talishar is bad, too. I would sooner use Talishar than the Plasma Barrel shot, I think. Maybe that means I should replace my sideboard one and replace the Plasma Barrel shot with the Talishar. Because Talishar at least is dealing 4 damage, which is a ton. But the problem is most ways I'm using my weapon in Dash is either A, I have 1 floating resource from Hyperdriver that I have nothing to use it on, so I just pistol them. Or B, I'm just chipping in damage until I can set up a good Overblast turn. Which Talishar is not good for because it breaks.
Yeah.
So it's not good for long-term chip damage. So personally, I think the pistol is the best, even when you are setting up these constant chains. Just because it's easier damage. Other than that, the one of Hyperdriver is fine. That's what you're going to start the game with almost every time. I think I might do one of Hyperdriver, one of Dissipation Shield, but I'm almost never going to grab Dissipation Shield, so it's not really worth it. So I'm fine with that. Back Alley does seem a little bit weird, but I guess maybe it's just one more red attack that kind of works the same way, but it doesn't. I don't like it because you can't play it from your hand and have it give you go again.
Right.
It's really only going to be kind of good if you banish it. So then why not just use a Mechanologist card of any other color? Because you're almost never going to attack with it because that's the end of your turn.
Maybe you deep blue it.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
Combustible Courier's great. Overloop, great. Overblast, I love that. They have the 2 win conditions, Overblast and Payload. He's running less than I do because I have both in red,
right,
and then I have 1 in yellow.
Okay.
And then your choice is if you want Overblast or Payload, which is very fringe. You can do either one of them and you're not trolling. Payload is easier to benefit from because you just have to boost once and it gains Dominate, which also makes it harder or easier to force the damage through. Overblast has the potential for more damage, but it's harder to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
For both of these to do the full effect, you need to boost and then play them, at which point they're doing the same amount of damage. But then if you've boosted twice, this is now 7 damage versus Payload 6.
Okay.
If you boost 3 times and then it's now 2 damage more. So it has a higher damage ceiling, but it loses the Dominate. So I think you can do either or, and I think if you prefer Payload or you prefer Overblast, you're still running the red of the other one because they're just that good. But I think it's very justifiable to do either. All 3 copies of 0 to 60, which is good. You are a terrible deck builder if you don't do that. So
yeah.
all 3 copies of Zipper Hit, same thing. All 3 copies of Throttle.
What does Zoom In do again?
Or not Zoom In, 060.
You did say 060.
Oh, yeah.
I just...
Zoom In?
Zoom In, yeah.
Zoom In's a pretty decent attack. It ops a bunch.
Okay, right. That's what it was.
And the nice thing with this is it's an op you can actually use. Because, like, you have other ops. You have Locked and Loaded. But the problem is you're almost never going to opt off this. Because you have to boost and then play this.
Right.
Which then breaks your chain. And so there is sometimes you will do that. When you like don't have an overblast or payload, so you don't care, you may do that. But most times you do care about the chain, and so you're really going to play this at the start for the damage boost. But you still run them, because they're Mechanologist cards, so you're going to have them. I prefer Rotary Ram to Locked and Loaded, but he is playing both, so that's fine. And he's doing... Oh, he also prefers Rotary Ram to Locked and Loaded, because he's using the red Rotary, but not the red Locked and Loaded, which is... That is fine.
Okay.
A little bit odd of choices that the blue cards here is doing these, because these pump spells do nothing, but I guess if you're always using it for resources, you don't care. Mm-hmm. He has the rate distribution. This is what most people do.
Okay.
It's usually somewhere in the ballpark. It's always like 20 to 22 red, and then it's like anywhere between 8 to 12 blue, and then 8 to 10 yellow. It's if you look up tournament decks for Dash, almost every single one of them holds to that curve. It's wild.
That's interesting.
Mine, I think, is like 11 blue, 9 yellow, and then 20 red, I think. Something like that. But yeah. I'm okay with this list. I think the back alley break line's weird. I would almost certainly replace it with something else.
You'll have to listen to his video to figure out
why
his reasonings and why he's wrong.
I would probably change a couple of other things around here, but they're not like huge changes. It's just like I would probably drop the 2 yellow zoom-ins and take 2 yellow payloads, which means less attacks that boost, but more finishers. I would probably drop one of the blue pump spells and then put like probably blue zoom in to have just as many boost attacks again. Right. So that's probably what I would do, but I don't hate it. So I don't really hate anything here. The biggest thing I dislike is that I don't think Plasma Barrel Shot is ever mathematically going to work out for you in the long run. I think you're going to be able to do more with pistol and have it be more effective over the long run. Just from a personal experience playing a lot of Dash, is that most of the times I use the pistol is because I have some floating resource that I have to find a use for, and it's only ever one. It's never enough to pay for a shotgun. So, but this is Shotgun Dash, so obviously he's trying to make the shotgun work. So... But yeah, and that's all of the ones he has on FaBrary. That ended up being a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. But
I mean, we did kind of reiterate some stuff.
Yeah, that's true. And then I definitely took a fair bit of time to poo-poo on some things, but... But, and I think the important thing to take out of this, too, Red Zone Rogue, like, none of these decks were even close to as bad as some of the worst ones we saw in the previous episode. And I think pretty much all of these decks are on par with some of the best we saw. So, obviously, he's really good at deck building. And so most of my, like, critique was about, like, for the most part, small marginal things.
Right.
With the one exception being the Icelander sideboard.
Yeah.
That was the most egregious to me. But yeah, most of it was like little tweaks.
Yeah. It's, for the most part, the structure's there, but there's like a couple things where he shouldn't put that in, or he could change it out, or we would prefer something different.
A lot of it was like personal choice. Yeah. And then the only like strict issue ones are like the Moonwish Cano, which is 2 cards out of 51.
Right.
And then Icelander, probably 5 to 6 cards in the sideboard, whatever it was.
I think the best one was the Azalea.
I think so. I think the Azalea one was the one that had the fewest problems.
Mm-hmm.
Probably
and some actual
Faye
revelations.
or Cano behind it. And the only problem with the Cano deck is I don't know if it is the best way to play Cano, but it's really fun. And so it's my favorite way to play Cano.
Sunkiss.
Yeah. It's obviously not necessarily trying to be the best Cano. It's trying to do this one thing with Cano, which may be as good as going just like full mage Cano, but it's debatable. Yeah, so I mean, really the only thing I hated was the Icelander sideboard. And I mean, like, all of these decks are very functional. Like, none of them are going to have issues like the Just Smash Rhinar deck we saw, where we wanted to like it, but it was like 50-50 you're whiffing on all of the 6 Power Matters things.
Right.
Like, that's a deck with a functional issue, where it's going to be very inconsistent and not work well for you. None of these decks have that problem. They just all have things where, like, you could get far more out of the deck by changing something. So, that is... impressive in and of itself. So, yeah, I liked it. I'm probably going to build that Azalea deck. with a little bit of tweaks, but probably going to do that. I've already built Moonwish Cano, and I love it. I cannot speak highly enough for it. It may not be the best way to play Cano, but it's probably, even if it's not, it may be the best way, and if it's not, it's pretty close, and you're definitely going to have way more fun playing that, because Commoner Cano is not great. And so the Moonwish one is definitely one of the funnest ways you can do it. And ironically, despite having that many attacks in it, of a full 10, and a Talishar is your main weapon, it feels the most like normal Cano than if you go full mage Cano.
Right.
And that's because Sunkiss just feels very Cano-like, because you're like just drawing cards, cycling through your deck, and gaining life at the same time. It feels like a Cano deck. And then the Icelander deck has probably taught me a couple of things I want to tweet about my own.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I really learned anything from the Dash one, but...
The Fae one, it's more of like, I went towards a different
direction.
direction.
You went a different
I started in that direction, and then I decided on a more stable build.
Yeah, something that's going to be highly consistent, but maybe have a lower ceiling.
Yes.
And
it's
that's
only
like personal
slightly
choice.
lower.
Yeah. Yeah, because you do still have stuff like Salt the Wound, which can be like a huge finisher and stuff. So
it was like a difference of an average of 14 damage a turn to an average of 12 damage a turn.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or
which is
something
not
like
bad.
that.
Not bad. And we also learned that FaBrary is actually a kind of neat site. Might make an account on this so that we can start putting our deck lists on there too. If we have to look at like how the actual deck builder works. Okay, so we have to create one to start doing that. Not surprising, but we'll have to see that. But yeah, and also Talishar is really sweet, which was not a part of the video. We didn't do it in the video, but oh wait, right, hang on, let that.
You broke it.
I did break it, very much broke it.
And there it is.
Go on. There we go. Because I realized this is not going to work because I have to leave the lobby, but... Okay. Yeah. So, if you like the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more Commoner content, and we'll check you in the next episode.
Bye.